Imagine waking up one morning and realizing the sun won't rise again. Not today, not tomorrow, not for months. The world outside is cold, silent, and painted in endless twilight. For us, this sounds like a scene from a sci-fi thriller. But for many of our ancestors living in the far north and south, this was reality. No electricity, no central heating, just sheer human resilience and creativity in the face of months-long darkness. So how did they survive when the sun disappeared? Picture yourself standing on a rocky coastline in the Arctic, thousands of years ago. The last rays of the sun slip below the horizon, and the elders in your community remind you, this is the last sunset we'll see for months. From now until spring, the world will be bathed in near total darkness. No glowing cities on the horizon, no warm light bulbs in a living room, not even a digital clock to break the night. Just stars, the moon, and the soft dance of the aurora across the frozen sky. For our ancestors in the far north, places like Greenland, Alaska, northern Canada, and Scandinavia, this wasn't just poetic imagery, it was survival. The Earth's tilt meant entire regions would go without sunlight for weeks or even months, plunging people into a hostile environment of extreme cold and darkness. Welcome to Before Flame. If you enjoyed traveling back in time with me, don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you never miss the next journey into our ancient past. Now I'd love to hear from you. Tell me in the comments, where are you watching from and what time is it right now? It'll make me so happy to see our community connecting from all around the world. And most importantly, if this video make you just imagine the Stone Age or actually feel what it was like to live as a caveman or cavewoman, share your thoughts below. I'm excited to read them all. The first challenge wasn't physical. It was psychological. Imagine the weight of endless night pressing down on you. Studies today show how modern people struggle with seasonal depression from just shorter winter days. Now amplify that, no sunrise at all. For ancient communities, this could bring not only sadness and fatigue, but fear. The kind that seeps into your bones when you don't know if or when the light will return. But here's the remarkable part. Instead of surrendering to despair, our ancestors found ways to adapt. They learned to read the stars, track the moon, and predict seasonal cycles with astonishing accuracy. To them, the vanishing sun wasn't a mystery. It was a challenge they prepared for year after year. As the days of darkness stretched into weeks, the landscape transformed. Frozen seas locked in ships and hunting grounds, while snow buried paths that once connected families and tribes. With no sun to guide the rhythm of daily life, our ancestors had to invent their own measures of time. For many northern peoples, the moon became their clock. Its cycles gave structure when the sun refused to. Others relied on the shifting positions of constellations, which acted like a celestial calendar. Imagine looking up at the stars every night, knowing your survival depended on understanding their silent language. But there was another obstacle, the body itself. Human biology is tied to sunlight. Without it, our circadian rhythms, the natural cycles that regulate sleep, hunger, and energy, fall into chaos. Today, people use special lamps to simulate sunlight during winter months, but our ancestors had no such technology. Instead, they built routines around firelight and communal life. Fires weren't just for warmth. They were psychological anchors. The flicker of a lamp carved out a sense of normalcy, a reminder that life still had order even when nature seemed frozen in chaos. Isolation also weighed heavily. Villages could feel cut off from the rest of the world, enclosed by miles of silent tundra. But this isolation forged strong bonds. Families and clans huddled together, telling stories, sharing songs, and passing down knowledge in the quiet dark. It wasn't just a way to pass time, it was a survival tool. Stories became maps, lessons, and warnings, ensuring each new generation knew how to endure what seemed unendurable. The darkness tested them, but it also connected them in ways daylight never could. Despite the weight of endless night, our ancestors never lost sight of one truth: the sun always returns. Survival depended on faith in this cycle and preparation for it. As the months of darkness wore on, entire communities looked for the earliest signs of change. Shamans, elders, and sky watchers became guardians of hope. They knew the patterns of the heavens, predicting the day when the first thin glow would appear again on the horizon. To ordinary people, this knowledge seemed almost magical, proof that their leaders could speak to the universe. These early astronomers gave reassurance in the darkest hours. The sun has not abandoned us. It will rise again. But preparation wasn't only spiritual. Practical steps mattered too. Before the sun disappeared, food had been hunted, preserved, and stored with care. Dried fish, smoked meats, and animal fats became lifelines. Firewood and blubber were stockpiled, knowing they'd be needed most when the cold was deepest. Even clothing was prepared strategically. Thicker hides and carefully sewn furs designed to trap every ounce of heat. Still, the psychological strain lingered. People marked the time with rituals and small celebrations, not only to honor the cosmos, but to keep spirits alive. The return of light was never taken for granted. When the first dawn finally came, sometimes just a faint red line at the horizon, it was met with joy, feasts, and gratitude. Imagine if darkness was the first challenge, the second was far more lethal, the cold. In regions where the sun disappeared for months, temperatures dropped so low that exposed skin could freeze within minutes. For our ancestors, survival meant waging a daily battle against this invisible enemy. The key weapon? Shelter. Ancient Arctic communities didn't just build homes, they engineered them. The Inuit, for example, constructed igloos from blocks of compacted snow which acted as natural insulators. Step inside one, and the temperature could rise dramatically compared to the frozen world outside. In Scandinavia, Norse settlers built longhouses with thick timber walls and sod roofs, packing every gap with moss or straw to trap heat. These weren't just houses. They were lifeboats in a sea of ice, but even the strongest shelters were useless without fire. Wood was precious, and in treeless Arctic regions, people turned to ingenious alternatives. Whale blubber, seal oil, and even animal bones became fuel sources. Small lamps carved from stone or soapstone provided both light and warmth, their flames carefully tended like sacred guardians of life. Imagine a family huddled around such a lamp. Every flicker a reminder that fire meant survival. Clothing, too, was a survival tool. Our ancestors perfected the art of layering animal skins and furs. Caribou hide, with its hollow hairs that trapped air, was prized for insulation. Seal and walrus skins provided waterproof protection against icy winds. Every stitch, every seam, carried generations of knowledge passed down, refined and remembered. Survival in a sunless world wasn't about brute strength. It was about ingenuity, patience, and the wisdom to use every resource nature offered. Even the warmest shelter meant little if the stomach was empty. During the sunless months, food wasn't just sustenance, it was strategy, foresight, and discipline. Hunting and fishing were timed carefully. Before the polar night fell, communities worked tirelessly to stockpile resources. Hunters pursued caribou, seals, and walruses, while fishers hauled in cod and salmon. Nothing went to waste. Meat was dried, smoked, or buried in permafrost to preserve it. Animal fats, rich in calories and were treasured, often consumed directly or rendered into oil for lamps. To our ancestors, fat wasn't just food. It was concentrated energy, vital for surviving the bitter cold. Storage was an art. Inuit families dug ice cellars beneath the ground, creating natural refrigerators that could keep meat edible for months. In Norse settlements, food was salted and kept in wooden barrels, with supplies rationed carefully so they wouldn't run out before spring. A single poor season of hunting or fishing could mean disaster, forcing entire communities to tighten their belts. And while the Arctic offered little in the way of agriculture, some groups found ways to supplement their diets. Dried berries, roots, and seaweed were gathered during brief summers and saved for the long dark. These weren't luxuries. They provided vital vitamins that helped stave off illness. Meals were more than nourishment. They were moments of unity. Families gathered around a shared pot or roasted meat, eating together in the glow of firelight. Every bite carried the weight of survival planning. Every shared portion a reminder that life continued even in the heart of darkness. No one survived the long darkness alone. Isolation could mean death, so our ancestors relied on cooperation as much as they did on fire or food. Communities became tightly woven networks where every skill, every role mattered. Resource sharing was common. A hunter who returned with a seal didn't just feed his own family. The catch was divided across the settlement. Tomorrow another hunter might be more fortunate, and the cycle of sharing kept everyone alive. This wasn't generosity in the modern sense. It was survival economics. a recognition that one person's success meant the community's survival. Roles were divided with precision. Men often braved the hunts, while women became masters of preservation, clothing making, and lamp tending. Elders provided knowledge: when to hunt, how to track animals in darkness, which constellations guided the seasons. Children too had responsibilities, learning survival skills through practice, stories, and ritual. Each member, no matter how small, contributed to the collective effort. But beyond physical needs, the community met emotional ones. Long months without sunlight could easily breed despair, yet gathering together for songs, dances, and shared stories kept spirits alive. A single story told by firelight could spark hope in dozens of hearts. These communal rituals weren't just entertainment. They were medicine for the soul, a buffer against the mental weight of unending night. In the end, survival wasn't measured only in calories or warm clothing. It was measured in unity. Alone, one person might freeze or starve. Together, entire communities endured, proving that the strongest weapon against the darkness wasn't fire or food, but each other. For our ancestors, survival wasn't only about food and fire. It was also about meaning. When the sun disappeared for months, people sought answers, and they found them in stories, myths, and rituals. Across the Arctic, darkness wasn't viewed simply as an absence of light. It was alive, powerful, and often spiritual. The Inuit, for example, told tales of the sun and the moon as brother and sister, forever chasing each other across the sky. To them, the long night wasn't just a physical phenomenon. It was part of a cosmic drama, written in the heavens above. In Norse mythology, the endless winter was tied to Fimbulwinter, a great, unrelenting cold that would precede the end of the world, Ragnarok. For Viking settlers braving the northern dark, these legends gave a framework for their struggles. The bitter cold wasn't random. It was part of a greater story, one they could understand and pass on. Rituals often accompanied these beliefs. When the darkness pressed heavily, ceremonies were performed to honor the forces of nature. Offerings made to spirits, ancestors, or the sun itself, asking for protection and the promise of return. Fire wasn't only a survival tool, it was sacred, a symbol of life's triumph over the night. These myths weren't mere entertainment. They gave comfort, purpose, and identity. To sit in a circle and hear an elder tell why the sun had vanished was to believe that the universe had order, that the darkness wasn't endless chaos but part of a story, and every story has an ending. In a world without books, screens, or written records, stories weren't just entertainment. They were lifelines. Around the glow of fire or oil lamps, our ancestors turned darkness into a classroom, a theater, and a church all at once. Oral traditions carried the wisdom of survival. A hunting tale might disguise a lesson about animal migration patterns. A myth about a trickster spirit could teach children to be cautious on thin ice. Even lullabies were layered with knowledge, rhythmically planting seeds of memory in the minds of the next generation. These stories ensured that crucial skills, when to hunt, where to travel, how to endure hardship, were never forgotten. But storytelling did more than pass down practical knowledge. It built bonds. Sitting shoulder to shoulder in the long night, families laughed at funny tales, wept at tragic ones, and felt less alone in their struggle. The stories transformed isolation into connection, turning a silent void into a shared experience. Elders were the keepers of these traditions, respected not only for their age, but for the library of voices they carried within them. Through them, the dead lived on, and the wisdom of centuries guided the living. Listening wasn't passive. It was an act of participation, a thread that bound every listener to their ancestors. When you imagine those nights, a circle of faces lit by fire, eyes wide as an elder recites the origin of the stars, you begin to see that storytelling wasn't a pastime. It was survival of the spirit, the glue that held communities together while the outside world lay frozen and dark. After months of darkness, the first faint glow on the horizon wasn't just light, it was salvation. For our ancestors, the return of the sun was a sacred event, celebrated with rituals, feasts, and deep gratitude. In the far north, Inuit families marked the moment with songs and offerings, honoring the spirits for bringing warmth back to the land. Children were sometimes led outside to face the sunrise, encouraged to remember the sight and carry hope into future winters. For them, this wasn't just astronomy, it was renewal. proof that life always returned after hardship. Norse and Scandinavian peoples also held festivals to honor the rebirth of the sun. Yule, which survives in modern holiday traditions, was originally a midwinter celebration filled with fire, feasting, and community. Bonfires symbolized the returning light, while shared meals reminded people that survival had been a collective achievement. In many cultures, these celebrations weren't only about joy, they were about reaffirming unity, ensuring that no one forgot how they had endured the darkness together. These rituals carried profound psychological weight. Months of fear, hunger, and fatigue gave way to laughter, dance, and relief. The celebrations weren't simply cultural expressions, they were emotional resets, healing the wounds of the long night and preparing people to face the year ahead. The darkness had taught resilience, patience, and unity. But the sun's return gave something even greater: hope. And for our ancestors, hope was the ultimate survival tool. When the sun disappeared for months, our ancestors faced a challenge that seems almost unimaginable to us today. Yet they endured. Through ingenuity, they built shelters that turned ice into warmth. Through resourcefulness, they preserved food and fire that carried them through the endless night. And through culture, spirit, and storytelling, they found meaning in the darkness, reminding themselves that survival wasn't just about enduring, it was about belonging, about hoping, about waiting together for the light to return. The long night was more than a season. It was a test of humanity. And in passing that test, our ancestors proved something timeless, that even in the deepest darkness, people can create light.